Was I the only one that really liked the blue shell in New Super Mario Bros? Maybe this is just me, but when I was a lot younger, I would pick random levels and see how long I could last bouncing around in the blue shell. So that got me thinking, why not try to legitimately beat the whole game with only the blue shell? The rules here are simple. I just have to be inside the shell at all times, and I can only be outside of it when I'm getting the running start or if I have to enter a pipe/door. So we'll of course start with 1-1, and after hitting this wall and going back to the beginning, I just realized what a mistake this was attempting this challenge and how hard this is going to be. Trying again, I realized a maximized jump could clear this wall. What really worried me though was the ending because of the staircase of blocks, but by some miracle, I managed to perfectly jump off the block and make my way to the goalpost. 1-2 was no sweat. Right after the checkpoint, you have to make some precise jumps here and there, but I didn't have any trouble. With 1-3, there was a block with a tiny mushroom that I had to avoid, but otherwise got around that and cleared the level. And then came one mid-castle. I learned how much vertical levels were gonna suck once I got here. The first challenge were these opening and closing pathways. There was 4 in a row to clear, and climbing up them was an issue because I was always moving at the same speed, making it difficult to time when to jump. As you'll see, I'm constantly going up and down these things or just getting squished. But with some practice, I figured out the pattern and was able to get myself up and out. But I'm not even close to done yet. Immediately after that is 4 vertical blocks and 1 long horizontal one that closes up and down in a domino fashion. I had no idea how to get through this. All that would happen is I'd clear the area, try to jump up, miss, then go back to where I was. Apparently, the strategy was to wait until the blocks closed in, because by complete accident, that's how I got past this segment. And the final thing was this staircase of blocks, and they kept moving in and out of place. This was aggravating because I kept getting my shell pretty high, but never high enough to get out of that area. Thank God the ceiling was so low, because by using that, I was able to bounce off the side, land on the top block, and clear the section. The rest of the level was easy enough. But I learned something super weird about Bowser Jr. While you can knock him over with the Koopa shell, you actually can't hit him. For some reason, the shell just goes through his entire body. So I had to stop using the shell to jump on him. You could technically say this doesn't count, but this honestly seems like an overlooked glitch on Nintendo's end, so I think this is fine and we can move on. About halfway through 1-4 was a huge wall of bricks which worried me, but by traveling back a bit and taking this higher route, I was able to clear them. But then I got to the end of the level with this yellow pipe. No matter how hard I tried, I was not able to get over the jump because the ground was too low. I tried jumping from multiple spots, but nothing really got me close, so I went back to the giant wall of bricks to try getting to the green pipe, but as I was breaking them up, I wasn't able to get in this tiny crack, which doesn't make sense because normal Koopa shells can do that. So at this point, I'm giving up on this level. If the challenge turns out to not be possible, I'll go back and try the rest of World 1. My only option now was to get back to 1 mid-castle and enter this door. Now, I'm in a room with a bunch of randomly moving platforms, and believe it or not, I was not only able to get into my shell, but I also timed my jumps just right that I was able to enter the secret area. The room after that has a row of blocks to smack up, and then we can take the trusty old cannon to World 5. Going into 5-1, I discovered that the blue shell destroys snowballs, which makes this level extremely easy. The thick snow also doesn't slow me down. I only had trouble with this one jump and kept falling down this gap, but otherwise it was a cakewalk. After 5-2's checkpoint, I had to make a lot of really precise jumps. Passing this barrage of bats are a lot of really small platforms, and it was easy to either fall or knock myself the other way. After a lot of attempts, I realized that staying as high as possible was the easiest way to get through this. After that, I was good to go. 5A required a lot of trial and error. Since the mushrooms constantly change in size, you're forced to think ahead and remember where you need to be at all times. This whole level works on a cycle. You start at the beginning when the mushrooms at their longest, and then you can make it across that way. This took quite a long time to do, but it was actually possible. And then came 5 Mid-Castle. This is where things start to get really stupid. This is another vertical level, but it's also an auto-scroller. And this auto-scroller features these freaking spikes. Now at first, it's really not that bad because the spikes just roll in and out of the stage. But then, a spike actually stays in your area, so you have to be really cautious with your jumps. But hold up, here comes 2 spikes! I can't begin to tell you how many times I had to restart start because of running into these dumb things. Trying to get around them was stupid hard. I got to this part with 3 question mark blocks, and this is where I kept dying because the spikes kept getting in my way. The only solution was to jump in between the wall and this block at the perfect time, land in the middle, do a tiny jump, then do another tiny jump to hit this question block, and a third tiny jump to hit the block again. I felt pretty darn satisfied after clearing that, but then the big spike came in. And this guy ruined my whole day. This spike is so giant that I literally could not jump over it. I tried to clear it dozens of times, but never got enough height, or I just run into one of the smaller spikes. Now yes, there's this tiny platform on the left that I could use, but that wasn't big enough for me to land on to clear the spike. And even if I could do that, that would only work one time. So I checked if there was any secret exits here or anywhere else in World 5, and sadly there isn't. So with that, it is not possible to beat New Super Mario Bros. With only the blue shell. But we're not gonna stop here. We might as well try out the rest of the levels and see which ones we can complete. Going back to World 1, we left off at 1-5. This course looked easy enough, but then I touched the pink bouncy mushrooms and Mario detracted from his shell immediately. So never mind, I guess. 1A wasn't doable either because it's a water level and we can't be in our shell. With that said, every water level is impossible. These include 3-1, 3-3, 3A, 4-3, 6-5, 8-2, and 8-3. But now onto One Castle. This was a really interesting level because Mario can actually ride the ropes while in his shell, which I wasn't sure would be possible or not. This level definitely kept me on my seat though, as missing any jump would send me into the lava. There's a section where these spiked platforms slowly rise up and down, and if it wasn't for this tiny gap around the end, there's no way I'd be able to clear this. And get this, I can actually hit Bowser with my shell, and he'll take damage and be gone after 3 hits. This confirms Bowser Jr. is stronger than Bowser. What's up with that? With all that said, of all the levels in World 1, 5 out of 8 were possible to beat. That's more than half, so hey, that's not too bad. I guess we'll move on to World 2 now. 2-1 was pretty simple. There were some small jumps I had to make halfway through, but otherwise it was straightforward. 2-2 went 5 until the end. There's a bunch of random blocks in this yellow and green pipe. While I could technically jump over these 2 pipes, it always led to my death, so I had to find another way. And the other way was to carefully jump after hitting this corner to land on this set of 2 blocks, then quickly jump to the set of 3 to finish up. This was way harder to do than it looked, believe me. After entering the pipe in 2-3, it led to this underground section and I was starting to get excited, but then I forgot what exactly was down here, starting with these flippy things. You can only go through this by ground pounding, and thankfully Mario does ground pound while in the shell, so we're still in the clear. But not for long because this barrier has screwed us over. Normally, you just walk forward and the barrier opens, but you have to apply consistent pressure so the barrier doesn't collapse back down. And I can't do that in the shell. All I can do is hit it and bounce back, and basically I'm just stuck here. For 2A, I was unsure about finishing this level, and unfortunately we can't complete this because we're required to either swim through the water or take these springs, which both force Mario out of his shell. 2-4's beginning seemed doable, but I didn't realize what I was up against. There's 2 big steps that I had to clear, and even when I jumped at the earliest time on the edge, I could not get myself up top. I tried jumping off the top of these bricks and that didn't get me across. I seriously tried this jump at every possible angle, but nothing seemed to work. So this level isn't happening either. But no worries, we're back at another castle. My favorites. The gimmick in 2 Mid Castle are these Ferris wheels, and trying to navigate them is hard enough, but I also had to move up. And when I say up, I had to somehow land on top of these 3 question mark blocks and the Ferris wheel above that. This was a ridiculous feat, but after some extremely precise jumping, I somehow got on top of the question mark blocks, then the Ferris wheel above, and then onto solid ground. It's too bad I couldn't get around this rope bar though, deeming this level impossible. Now thankfully 2-5 worked out, but it was really annoying. There were so many places where I just kept bouncing around, and then you got this stupid boomerang bro that throws a boomerang in the worst spot. The only way I could hit him was to sink into the quicksand, then come back out and snipe him when he wasn't looking. Get zucked, idiot. Moving to 2-6, this is an auto-scroller with 1 platform, so obviously we can't do this. To save you guys time, obviously all the auto-scrollers aren't going to be beatable, and these include 5-4, 7-1, 7-3, 7-7, 7 Castle, and 8 Mid Castle 2. But moving on to 2 Castle, it went well for about 15 seconds until we got to this narrow pathway. Spikes roll through this path, and normally you can avoid them by sliding into these tiny crevices and ducking, but we can't do that in the shell, so the spikes are entirely unavoidable. Out of every level in World 2, 3 of the 9 levels were possible. That is not a good sign moving ahead. So jumping into World 3, let's see how 3-2 sketches out. This level took a bit of time since the mushrooms were constantly tilting. There weren't many issues though until the end, because normally you're supposed to stand on this tiny mushroom while it bounces around, but obviously we can't do that. Thankfully, there just so happens to be this green pipe we can enter instead, and that takes us to an alternate exit. The end of this path has tons of tilting mushrooms, but studying how they move for a bit, you can easily get across and beat the level. I can't say the same for 3 Mid-Castle though, since the beginning requires us to climb up this barbed wire, which we can't do being inside the shell. There's always 3B to attempt though, and I love the pipe theme in this level. There was this challenging jump where I had to bounce off this question mark block after jumping high, then bounce off this yellow pipe so I could perfectly jump off the green one on the very right corner. Now besides that particular part, the rest of the course wasn't too bad besides some scary small jumps I had to do across the wide stretch of pipes. 3C had a couple of tricky jumps around where the P-switch was, but overall it wasn't that bad. And then I went through this pipe and was sent into the water. Why? Why did you have to ruin this for me, game? But my luck is changing because I'm about to enter 3 Ghost House. Yeah, this ought to be a trip. Right away, I found a staircase that I wasn't able to climb up. The steps were so tiny that it just didn't seem like I could actually bounce off them. But then I came to a crazy revelation. You can slide up the staircase without the stairs. Why this is a thing, I have no idea, but I was able to make some more progress with this strat at least. And I was getting pretty excited about actually beating this, until I realized I needed to hit this exclamation switch to make this door appear so I can enter it. And when you hit the switch, the staircase rises up. So once again, I was stuck trying to climb these stairs. I was really running out of ideas, so I did some experimenting with the shell and tried to figure out how early I could jump. At first, I thought the cloud of smoke had to appear in order for me to jump, but I could also do a jump without the smoke, which gave me some hope. After dozens and dozens of attempts, I did actually manage to jump up the staircase one time, but I ended up bouncing backwards almost immediately afterwards. So as cool as it is to slide up these slopes, this level ain't happening. Oh no, we could just forget about 3 Castle. The spikes get in the way and we can't slow down at all. Of all the levels in World 3, 2 out of 9 could be beat. That is just pathetic. I really hope World 4 will be kinder to us. Starting with 4-1, it was rolling smoothly until we got to Dory. I kind of assumed we'd just be screwed, but look at this. I can literally just sit in place while Dory sails forward. I'm not really sure why this worked, but it only worked for a little bit. Around the end, I'm sent to the top of Dory's head, then I sit there and eventually just get dropped into the poison. And this is a problem because we still have this big gap to clear, but by going up these blocks and jumping at the last possible second, I can just barely touch the ground and finish the level. 4-2 had this purple mushroom near the beginning that I kept falling through. Look at that epic hitbox, I mean really. By doing a tiny jump, you can just barely get this, and the rest of the level after that is easy. Jumping into 4 Mid-Castle, right away I was terrified of these platforms, but by some freakish miracle, I was able to get up and make it out alive. Don't ask how I didn't get squished. But it doesn't matter anyway, because past the floor, I'm forced to climb up more barbed wire. 4A isn't much better. While I can clear a few jumps, there's a giant gap of poisonous disappointment. And then for 4-4, I got stopped by a vine. I tried to clear the gap, but couldn't get high enough to do so. And after all that failure, it's time for a ghost house. Now, there was a lot of pipes and doors to get through, but I could surprisingly actually complete the level. Well, I'll be damned. 4-5 was bittersweet though. While I could technically climb up to the pipe where the bombs spawn out, I can't physically stay in the area long enough for that to happen, so I'm basically stuck here. Plus my shell knocks them out instantly anyway. 4-6 is another Dory level, but the platform is too high and forces Mario to balance on Dory's head instead of below the neck, so I can only balance on Dory for maybe a couple of seconds, and I can't jump to further ground as it's too far away. Finally, 4 Castle has these slow swinging platforms which suck because Mario can't get past the third one before hitting the lava. I tried timing my jumps at several different variations within the cycle, but nothing was coming even close. So let's tally up our wins for this world. Only 3 out of 10 were completed. That's still not that great, but let's jump into World 5. Going into 5-3, I can say that this was by far the easiest level to beat. And with 5B, I had the most insane luck with these ice blocks. There was a lot of holes and the jump was really high, but I somehow managed to get up there and finish this course. Moving to 5 Ghost House, I was thinking my odds were pretty slim with this one, but luck was actually in my favor. To start, this bruiser was trying to break the wall, and the only reason he did was because I could bounce off these blocks and he noticed me for long enough. Then I had to climb up this path that looked impossible, but with 2 small jumps and 1 big one, I somehow made my way up. And after that, the level was basically done. 5C was going really well until after the checkpoint. I got to this part where there was a giant hole and a bunch of bruisers hanging out on the top. I needed to hit the switch at the bottom to make some platforms appear, but there was no way for me to be able to turn around and get inside to do that. 5 Castle was stupidly annoying because of these conveyor belts. Some of them were fine, but others forced me to jump so I wouldn't lose momentum. Pretty much the whole level was just a pain having to figure all this out. After tons of tries though, I was actually able to get across and could even hit PD Piranha with the shell, completing this level. So out of every World 5 level, 7 out of 11 were beatable. This is definitely our most successful world yet. So let's see how World 6 stars. With 6-1, I couldn't clear the type rope nor slide over it with the shell. 6A had this giant tornado and forced Mario out of his shell. I tried going underneath the tornado, but was blocked off. 6-2 seemed like if I just watched the water level this could work, but after leaving the red pipe, the gap was too big and I couldn't clear it without going into the water. I tried jumping off the question mark block, but of course there was an invisible block that got in the way. Well, this is not a good start. But let me tell you this, 6 Mid Castle was a freaking adventure. Right away, I had a giant spike that slid left to right, and it required the most insane timing to get past. But that was only the first one. I had to basically do the same thing 2 more times, and then this shorter spike could only be cleared if I went towards the left at the perfect time before it came back. Thank God there was a pocket where I could just chill for a second. Then I had to do this 1 more time and finally got to a checkpoint. But now is the fun part, getting up these tall set of platforms with 3 spikes that all crash in at the same time. You're probably looking at this and thinking, yeah, there's no way this is happening. And that was my initial thought. But for some reason, I just kept on trying. I kept finding more and more effective ways to jump and better places to land, and my best attempt was getting right above the very top spike. Unfortunately, Mario always faced the wrong way, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. Maybe if this was tasked, it'd be doable, but I highly doubt it. Thankfully, 6-3's was a breeze. There was just a lot of pipes to manage through. And with 6-4, you can barely clear this super narrow vertical path, and it doesn't even matter because there's a huge rope swing up ahead. I know we were just in a castle, but it's time to tackle the second one. And this time, it's worse because there's spikes on the walls to worry about. I couldn't make a lot of progress here. The stage just gets way too vertical, and I can't get any higher than this part here. The problem is my shell loses all of its speed, so I just kind of stop moving, and that's the end of that. 6B's first big jump is barely out of reach, and we aren't allowed to grab the pole for help. And 6-6 requires a spring, so that one's not doable. Right away, I knew 6 Castle would be tough. I was able to get to the part with the Koopa, but the platform he's on doesn't rise high enough for me to be able to jump over it, so there's no way I could beat this one either. Out of every World 6 level, 1 out of 11 were possible. That's a yikes for me. I'm really hoping World 7 treats us better. 7 Ghost House was surprisingly simple. The jump where I had to find the invisible block and use the switch was definitely tricky, but nothing unbearable. While 7-2 is an impossible auto-scroller, I wanted to showcase this one for a special reason. After building speed and running to the other side of the platform, I could go just fast enough to hop in my shell and actually slide towards the left infinitely as long as I jumped at the right time. While this looks really cool, the problem with this trick is the blocks up above eventually got in my way, and I couldn't adjust my jump at all to compensate. But still, I mean, this is pretty sick. 7 Mid Castle has spikes on the walls at the very beginning, and obviously we can't bounce off those. And 7-4 is another impossible spring-based level, but 7-5 was actually super easy. The final jump over the Bonsai Bill launcher was kind of hard, but that's about it. 7-6 was another painless level, but man, where do I even begin with 7A? I guess I'll start at this part with the 3 vertical pipes and the baby wigglers coming out of them. This was an absolute nightmare. The timing was the biggest problem, because everything had to be absolutely perfect. The first jump had to be short, but not too short. The second was super short. The third super short. Same with the fourth, and then I had to knock out all the wigglers. After that, I had to do this all over again just so I could stop at the pipe to go up. Then after that was an extremely narrow path with pipes sticking out in random places, and there was an annoying question mark block with a mini mushroom in it. This whole section was nothing but trial and error. I can't begin to describe how many attempts it took to climb up. And after miraculously getting through that, I had to hit the gold face block a few times to climb myself out. But with all of that said, I did somehow beat the level, and I'm still shocked it was possible. So of all the levels in World 7, 4 out of 11 were beatable. And that's not too bad, I guess, but let's wrap this up with World 8. 8-1 had a couple of challenging jumps around the end, but overall it wasn't too bad. With 8 mid-castle, however, there was no way to get to this super long platform up above. 8-4 was relatively easy, but 8 castle was a different story. While you can make some progress hitting the correct switches and jumping well, you'll eventually get stopped because you run out of ground to stand on. 8-5 was incredibly easy though, and with 8-6 I made a little progress but got stuck on this pipe. The walls were angled so awkwardly that there was no way I could use my momentum to get any higher. And thankfully, 8-7 has this extremely tall wall that I can't get up. It's just one of those days, I guess. For 8-8, I had to be cautious of the meteors, but it wasn't too shabby and was actually possible. And this is it. We've made it to 8 Final Castle. Jumping right in, the second room was way harder than I expected. Hitting the switch required me to jump on the right block at just the right time to flip the room. Then after that was all this fire, and it was over at this point. I managed to get myself jammed in this hole and needed to go towards the right. Once the fire went away, I had to perfectly jump so I'd hit the left wall, then this particular spot so I could jump up, but even when I did that, the fire would spawn back in. So finally, of all the levels in World 8, 4 out of 12 were doable. So here's the final chart of all the levels. 28 out of 81 of them could be completed with only the blue shell. I was not expecting this many levels to be unbeatable. It really goes to show just how nice it is to not play a Mario game like it's an auto runner. This was honestly painful to play through, but I hope you enjoyed the video regardless. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I hope you all have a wonderful day.